Hi, I'm Milo Denison.
Now, Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up Again.
Rip It Up is a topical show about life impacting creators around the world today.
Yeah, on tonight's show, we're joined by what many would call one of the iconic characters of Cult Zombie. It's Jim Krut, but better known around the world as Helicopter Zombie. But before we get into the show and have some really interesting chat with Jim, Milo, as usual, we always get people asking questions about you on regular themes. And this time the theme was, Milo, have you ever played or been the role of a zombie?
Yeah, I did a short film where I was a zombie, actually. I was a sad zombie seeking
zombie.
Yeah, I was a sad zombie, and I was seeking therapy because basically I was a zombie and nobody liked me. I think that if I remember correctly, that was the gist of it. I did it a long time ago. Like, I don't know where it's at. I think it was like something they submitted to some film festivals or something. Beyond that, I don't know what ever happened to it. But yeah, I do recall playing. I was a sad zombie. It's hard. I'm sure Jim can speak to this better than me, but you have to get the makeup on, which takes forever. And then you're stuck wearing it all day long. And so it's not as fun as you might think. But I didn't have my head chopped off by a helicopter. So there's that.
That was the fun.
I'm just wondering if the zombie was like, because you said you was playing a sad zombie that needed therapy. So was it a zombie was it emotive? Did you have to make it an emotive zombie?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So it wasn't like your George Romero zombie where you're just a mindless thing. It was more of a what's his name? I can't think of his name. There's a writer that does zombie books, and basically the premise is like the zombie's exactly the same as they are dead or alive in regards to intelligence. The only difference is that they're slowly rotting because they're, dead, physically dead, but brain wise and emotions wise, they're exactly the same. So it was kind of similar to that. That's enough of me. Jim, you are the one that we want to hear from. Absolutely. So thank you for being on the show with us. We're really happy to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became known as the Helicopter Zombie?
Okay. I'm Jim Krut. I live in Pennsylvania in the U.S. and I'd gone to college in Pittsburgh. And one of my classmates happened to be Tom Savini. And so Tom and I were pretty good friends, and we were also part of an in-college theater company. And even though the college owned the Pittsburgh Playhouse for theater production and theater students, we were not part of that. We were in the journalism program. And so we did some theater work together there as well. After that, we both went off to the Army. Tom became a combat photographer in Vietnam, and I went in as a combat medic. And some years later, just a few years later, I found myself back in Pittsburgh, and I ran into Tom, and Tom said, "I've got this great role for you. George Romero has a movie coming up." And I said, George Romero. He said, "Do you remember Night of the Living Dead?" And I said, yeah. Well, George directed that. This is, of course, before George was totally a household name. And, you have to think I was working in theater in Pittsburgh for about 6 years at that point. And sometimes it was tough. You're in a lot of competition with other folks for roles. Fortunately, I was in 2 different theater companies, and we were doing pretty well. But sometimes a stain on your record, like your permanent record, as I say, could mean you don't get some of the other roles. Like if you were in, who knows, porn films or something. Geez, we don't want him. He's a porn actor, whatever. I should be so lucky. But, but you have to think about it in the context of them. Tom said, and I said, sure. He said, "I've got this great role for you." And went over to his workshop, which was in the basement of his parents' home. And my girlfriend, who's now my wife of 43 years, was along, and she watched the process as well. And as you say, the prosthetics at the time were a little different. Things had gotten a little easier and better, but at the time they were using an alginate material. It was just Tom doing this, putting alginate, which is a kind of a rubbery plastic kind of material that fits on your face. It fills in all the little details. But once that firms up, you take it off and it kind of folds. It doesn't hold its shape. And he needed to make a complete head mold for me to do the rest of the prosthetics. So I was breathing through a straw for about 15 minutes or so while he did the alginate. And then he covered all of that with the plaster. And of course, you have to stay still. You can't move. You can't talk. You can't hear. You can't see. And the only way you're breathing is through a straw. So you have to kind of trust the person you're with who's doing this with you or to you. And it seemed to go fairly well, actually. And until a couple of days later, Tom gave me a call and said, Jim, we have a little problem. The plaster cracked. We have to do the process all over again.
Oh, no. And
so I think from that, I developed claustrophobia. Either that or it was underlying
the
entire time. But I never really wanted to do that extensive makeup where you can't quite tell what's going on. Ended up doing it one more time, but not in that context. So that's basically how I got into Dawn of the Dead. Tom cast me. George Tom knew a lot of people in Pittsburgh. Tom had worked in some theater. It's one of his favorite things as well. And a lot of the other folks that we worked in theater were new from college. We're also in Dawn of the Dead. So like Nick Tallow and David Crawford and David Early, who were all in Dawn of the Dead. I worked in theater with them, before Dawn of the Dead. Well, we were out of college a couple of years, of course, and I was in the military for 3 years. I'd worked a couple of years elsewhere in newspapers and following my journalism bent there. And decided I was going to head to Texas because I like San Antonio and it's a beautiful city. And I got as far as Pittsburgh. I said, I'd better see my friends before I leave because I had a lot of friends there. And they said, you shouldn't go anywhere. What do you mean? Well, there's going to be this oil embargo and, you won't be able to get gasoline. You won't be able to go anywhere. And I said, what's that all about? And they said, look, we can put you up. And, hey, how'd you like to teach school for a little bit? And I said, I don't have a teaching certificate. I don't know anything about teaching school. They said, it's an alternative high school for special students. I said, oh. And it's 6-week terms. And I said, I can handle that for 6 weeks, as long as I get paid and can eat and things like that, put some gas in the car. Well, the alternative high school also had another program, which turned out to be the Pittsburgh Laboratory Theater. And the director of that was another friend that we had in college, Bill Royston. And Tom and Bill and I were all pretty good friends and worked together actually in theater. So from there, I got involved with the Pittsburgh Lab Theater. After about 2 years of that, one of the board members decided to form another theater company and asked if I'd like to be part of it. It's going to be a unique repertory touring company of original plays, original music, things like that. And I said, well, how far are we going to go? And they said, we'll find out. So we went everywhere from Boston to Chicago to North Carolina. We did the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. So it was just great. I loved it, except after we got married, my wife and I had a child, and she was born in Pittsburgh. And I like to try a little gardening even at that time, except Pittsburgh was a pretty big steel-making town, as you may have heard. And at that time, the mills were going pretty strongly. And I looked out at my little garden, and there were little silver flakes on top of the tomatoes, little bits of metal that had just precipitated out of the air. And if you drove along the parkway from alongside the river, the mills were on the other side at night with your headlights on. It would reflect like snow. I thought,
wow, it must always got pretty surreal, to be honest, if anyone was just driving through and had never been been through before to see
Yeah,
that.
it was a little bizarre. I had to think about what it was, some weird phenomenon. So anyway, we left Pittsburgh at that point.
I just wanted to touch back on, because obviously with your first kind of major break, as sorts really, that you didn't know about at the time, and this is all kind of in hindsight now, but the fact that you was obviously mates with Tom Savini and that was your kind of break, anyone reading that will just be like, wow, how incredibly lucky. But at the same time, no one would know that Tom was going to go on to be this kind of this great guy in film.
When people say, gee, did you know Dawn of the Dead was going to be this universal worldwide hit and be translated into so many languages and a couple different versions, European version, the US version? No, nobody knows that. You can put everything you've got into a film, the best talent, the best sets, direction, artist, everything. It doesn't matter. It's like the guy who had the dog food company, and they were having their annual meeting. And he says, we've got the best advertising campaign in the world. Yay! And we've got beautiful cans of dog food. Yay! And we've got a great sales force. Yay! He said, well, how come we're not selling any dog food? And the whole place just went quiet until one guy in the back stood up and said, well, sir, dogs don't like it.
And that's movies.
Yeah.
Unless the people like it. It doesn't matter what you think.
And that is ultimately, that's all it can fall on, isn't it? The end game of anything is, you make something, produce something, and then if the public go, it gets binned. So
totally up to the fans.
I want to get on to kind of like the other part of the topic tonight as well, because obviously we're going to mix between like your film career and some stuff that's kind of personal to yourself with things that have been going on in the world.
Sure.
And part of that is spotlight on obviously Ukraine, things have been doing to support humanitarian efforts. And so, Jim, obviously this is quite close to you, as we've discussed previously. But you've got family in Ukraine, haven't you? And can you give people an idea of how things are out there currently based on what you've kind of heard firsthand?
It was pretty uncertain and very precarious for everybody because no one knew really what was going to happen, especially in the earlier days. And of course, any males who were between the ages of 18 and 60 could not leave the country. They were considered for military service. They had to be available. I had a couple cousins who took their 2 young children each. One went to Czech Republic, one went to Poland. Had another cousin who went to Germany. And of course, they had to leave their families and their parents behind and their husbands, all of that. It's devastating. And I just heard from one cousin who has just come back from Poland to Western Ukraine. And I've stayed in their house. I mean, I love the people. They're cousins. And so she showed me pictures of her father and someone else. They were out working in the garden because life still has to go on. And you can't just sit in front of a TV or something and worry about it. You have to be productive. You have to be part of the solution. Her mother has a bakery. I mean, by bakery, I mean a small building next to their house with 3 stoves and ovens. And she would make these beautiful, elaborate cakes. She might make, say, 40, 50 of them in a week. And then her husband would drive them to Lviv, the largest major city there, to some very exclusive bakeries. And that was, pretty good deal, except when the Russians invaded, everything in the bakery got changed over. So she was making rolls and bread and buns and things to send to the troops. But also in Western Ukraine, it wasn't just one pipeline of refugees coming through the country. People were streaming westward for some kind of safety on all available roads. And a number of them ended up in small villages, like the small village that most of my relatives live in. So they found shelter there. They My one cousin said, I've got a big field, if you could help me dig and, you can stay with us. And so people felt good about exchanging labor and things like that for the safety and shelter, food. Again, it was still uncertain. In 2012, I visited, and my one cousin took me to the confirmation of her two grandsons. That was in 2012. The last picture I saw a couple of weeks ago. They were both in uniform, holding rifles, and she said one was assigned to go to Donbass region. And so I worry very much about them and the uncertainty of what may be happening in the country, and especially to my friends and relatives there.
Wow. Well, thanks for that story. Your family and yourself, you've been doing a bit to help out as well, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe what people like us can do?
There are several, actually many organizations worldwide which are providing some assistance. Some are very specifically doing assistance in Ukraine. My daughter was a Peace Corps volunteer for 3 years in Western Ukraine, teaching English in Lutsk at Volyn University. And so she made a lot of friends there too, but she also made friends among the other Peace Corps volunteers. So they have an organization called the Return Peace Corps Volunteers from Ukraine. And they together have put together assistance, which they know is very specifically for help there. We've sent some funds to, buy generators for people who, need life support systems. There are, some other family members have donated to the Mennonite Central Committee, which does a lot of services in Ukraine. There's the World Central Kitchen, which has provided meals for refugees coming over the border to Poland, to several other countries. Razom, R-A-Z-O-M, is another excellent one. And actually, we've done whatever we can to help with that. I have a show coming up this weekend in Syracuse, and I actually put together a poster from a 25th anniversary Dawn of the Dead show, which had most of the lead actors and some of the other zombies and good stuff in it. And I'll be taking that to Syracuse and to Pittsburgh for a Living Dead weekend in another week. And all the funds from that are going to go to one of those causes. And it might be the retired or returned Peace Corps volunteers or Razom, probably. But there are a lot of good ones to check out.
Yeah, I think the trick, to my understanding, for people watching and listening, is just check to see how the money's being spent and where it goes to. Anytime you donate to a nonprofit aid program, sometimes there's the possibility that not all the money is actually going towards what it's supposed to be going towards. So that's, I just want, for anyone watching, make sure to pay attention to that. And I'm sure
that was confusing for us at first too, because we wanted to be able to help specifically our relatives if possible. And later we were able to find ways to do that. And we found out at the time there was, credit card companies would not work and bank transfers were not working, things like that, where we might have been able to donate some funds. But we were finally able to do some things through Western Union. And at one point, Western Union was not charging any fees for transfers to Ukraine.
Nice.
But the security questions and everything else that were being asked specifically for that reason, do you know the people you're sending funds to? Have you been requested by a stranger to send them money? All these other kinds of things which could possibly be scams. So there's a lot of vetting going on, and don't be discouraged if people
I think that's definitely the important thing as well, is obviously, especially when you know people that are over there, and it's quite frustrating that, because it's amazing how lines of credit can suddenly just disappear because of how the world is structured now. And, you can't just, it's not as simple as just sending over some goods to people. And there's plenty of channels that are trying to stop that. But also it's good that obviously there are plenty of people that, that can, and you've obviously been doing your thing. I know there's lots of people in the UK and in places, in the US too, and around the world that have also been doing their little bits to kind of come together and try and support Ukraine as much as they can. But I'm going to bring it back to the film again, because obviously, you was in Dawn of the Dead, but you've been in lots of things since that. But you had a bit of a hiatus between Dawn of the Dead and then your next kind of like set of acting roles. So before you stepped back into the movies, which was around about 15 years, so what's kind of going on in that time period?
Well, as I said, when I stepped away from Pittsburgh and the theater company I was working with, I moved to a rural area. Now, if you're in the UK, there's a lot of filmmaking going on. If you're in a city, there's filmmaking going on. In rural areas, maybe not so much. There was community theater. There was other theater. I did go back to Pittsburgh and do some theater at one point. But I was working in newspapers, magazines, and then I got a position where I was in charge of communications. So I got to do video, voiceovers, radio work, TV spots, legislative work as well. It was just a super position. I loved it. It was just a lot of involvement, and you get to sort of push this button and see if it works, push that button and see if it works. So I really enjoyed the marketing parts too. And it was for a nonprofit electric cooperative, of which there are 13 in Pennsylvania.
Is that because you wanted to get away from kind of like, obviously you mentioned about, you was driving home and you saw the steel flecks, or the oxides on the lake, and you obviously started a new family and things, and you just wanted to get away from not just having a rural life, but also, you wanted to get away from the kind of environmental impacts that, say, of bringing up a child.
Yeah, precisely. And when I did, my wife left her job, I left my job, we left Pittsburgh. We had nothing to start with. So a friend of mine contacted me once he heard I was back in this area in central Pennsylvania and asked if I wanted to do some work with him, which went on for a couple of months. But he also owned a newspaper. And then he said, I need an editor. Could you do that? And do you know any darkroom skills? I said, sure. And, I could set up a darkroom. I can do black and white photography. I've taken courses in color photography, sports, everything. So I really was pretty good at the photography side of things and the writing. And I learned then a lot of layout and some of the mechanics of actually running a small newspaper. I think it was a small circulation, probably under 5,000. And from that, I applied for a position as editor of a statewide magazine for the rural electric cooperatives. And that circulation was suddenly up to like 600,000. So it was an interesting step up and a lot of different responsibility. But there's this kind of community of journalism kind of people and writers. And it's like a clown convention, when people get together. Hey, I see you got big shoes. Yeah, I like your big road nose.
Yeah.
There was a lot of camaraderie among the people that I got to work with, other editors and writers. And I really liked that as well. Plus, there was a lot of travel involved. But some of those benefits at times then turn around and become, I don't want to keep doing that. And in a sense, that's what happened with theater too. We were doing a lot of traveling as a repertory company, being on the road for a couple weeks at a time. It gets a little strenuous, a little rough on maintaining a family. And that to me was the most important.
And then you got back into film in 2005, is that right?
Yes. It's an interesting story because I thought, well, I've been working in this position. I can get a little free time. If it works out, I could maybe do some film stuff because theater was really tough to try to do. because of the rehearsal schedules, 6-8 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And then performances.
I'm sure Milo can appreciate that being, being kind of in theatre as well. Yeah.
The biz. And I was on a 24-hour call. So could have happened any time until I got some, trained a few assistants. I said, you can call on them and I can get a little free time. So anyway, I went to do an audition in Harrisburg, which is about 40 miles away from Gettysburg. And just as I was filling up the paperwork, they said, oh, you come on in. And I said, oh, well, I don't have this done. Oh, no, that's all right. That's all right. And I sat down and started talking with the director and the producer, and we were chatting a bit. He said, I think he'd be great for this role. Kev's the technician, runs this power plant. I thought, getting typecast, but that's okay. And they said, well, we think you're going to be the guy. We'll give you a call later. So later that evening, the director calls. He says, why didn't you tell me you were the helicopter zombie from Donovan?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
I wrote it on the paper. So we didn't look at that until after you were gone. Okay, so what? You gave me the role because of my good looks or whatever,
Yeah.
I fit the role. And really, a bit of advice for anybody who wants to be an actor. It doesn't matter what you look like, if you're too tall, too short, too wide, too narrow. It's what the director has in mind.
Yeah.
They're going to do some casting. It's got to fit that look that they want. And unless you bring something particularly sparkling and they change everything. Just as an example of that, we did a theater piece in Gettysburg on the Triangle Factory fire. It was at the 100th anniversary of this fire in New York at a garment factory where the doors had been bolted, and the young women, a lot of them immigrant ladies, just jumped out of the 5th and 6th story windows to their death. And we performed that at the fire hall in Gettysburg. And somebody came to see one of the other actors, and he said, gave me a call. He said, I saw you in that play. I thought you did a great job. He said, I have this role coming up for Lifetime TV, and we're going to be, it's part of a series, and I thought you'd make a great judge. And I said, well, super. Where is it? And he said, well, it's Hagerstown. It's about 40 miles the other direction. I said, great. So I did this role as a judge, and it was a one-day shoot, and we had a great time. And then I got a call from somebody who said, hey, we're doing this show about like the men who made America, and the 1800s and all this labor strife and all these other good things. And we heard you, we're pretty good actor with all this good stuff. And I said, I kept rattling off whatever they asked. And they got to, and how tall are you? And I said, 6'4". And they said, oh, well, thank you very much.
It's so
crazy,
true,
isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, I'm chopped liver now. Hey. So, it doesn't matter. It's just what they have in mind. And if you have the look that they're looking for, you got whatever parameters they have for that role, you have a shot.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid they weren't looking for like Harry and the Hendersons or, Alf or something. It's like, oh yeah, we need the tall guy now. It's mad, isn't it, that you can have all the attributes and then there'd be one thing that they're just like, no, see you later.
That's the nature of the business.
You have to have a strong tolerance for rejection. I haven't done that many auditions. Oftentimes people just ask, could you do this role? Give me the script, let me see. And I thought, I'll go ahead and do this role, because I was working in theater and having a great time here in Gettysburg along with my job. We'd formed an entire theater company here. And I thought, it'd be nice to try another film role. So I went to this audition, and there's this whole theater, and there are like two people sitting out front, and then one is the director and the other is one of the producers. And he said, I'd like you to, which of these roles did you want to read for? And I said, well, there's this storekeeper, and then there's this minister. He said, why don't you read the minister first? And I said, okay. So I did this minister, did the cold read. He stood up, he said, are you a minister? Are you a real minister? And I said, no, No, you got the role if you want it.
It's like that was spot on.
Yeah, so I felt pretty good about that. That was great.
Yeah, that's a good audition if you nail it like that.
And that was film was called Ghosting. I did another role with that director, Kev Bamboo. He's just a marvelous, marvelous director. Taught me a great deal too. And I got to play a hitman in that one, and that was fun. It was so fun.
I'm sure, yeah.
You got to enjoy what you're doing.
If you went into every audition and the guy's asking you like, "Are you real?" Whatever role.
Are you a real hitman? Because you played that hitman perfectly in the audition.
Going on vacation, hitman. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That's cool stuff.
That's called A Host of Sparrows. We did that 2018. So that was fun. I really enjoyed the folks I worked with. It was a great ensemble cast, and he made it rain every day. I mean, with this artificial rain equipment that they cobbled together, and it was delicious. Anyway,
it's always great when you work on a project and you're done and you're like, that was a great experience versus like that sucked. Glad that's over with.
I wish I'd never done that role. Yeah, I know there are some roles like that. And that's why I like to see the entire script to make sure I'm not massacre stuff filmed or something.
Well, let's talk about Dawn of the Dead a little bit more because, we love Dawn of the Dead. What can we say? We have a couple viewer questions that were put out and for you. So the first one is going to be by Waterboy28, which says, "Did they really use a helicopter rotor to cut off your head?"
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah, that's what kind of question is that? Like,
maybe they think that they used a real one, but not a real working one.
Yeah,
something like that.
It was a real helicopter, and I was that close to the blades had they been running, but that was cut in afterward, so to speak.
Was the whole head prosthetic that they chopped it, or did they just put like a top piece on you that got chopped off?
Yeah,
just the top piece. That's what the head cast was at Tom Savini's workshop. Right. So what he did was create, build up the sides, and
I suppose it's trying to make a head that looks kind of long enough, but is still realistic enough to look like a normal head.
With some hair, but what happened, there was a lot of humidity because of the rain on the set, and it fluffed up perhaps a bit more than it should have. So it wasn't meant to look that kind of swollen. But that's weather, and that's you got to go with what the take is. But with that, he had built up a base that looked like brains that was flat on top. And then atop that, he added another layer of the foam material with the hair pieces on top of that. That was then cut into chunks. And those chunks were threaded together as one, literally as a string, with a clear monofilament fishing line. And then for the effect, someone off camera has similar piece of monofilament fishing line attached to that top piece. And at the cue, the person ran off with the top of my head, which came off in like a nice line of chunks, which was kind of cool to see. Tom Savini and another guy each had these hand fire extinguisher pumps that were filled with the artificial blood. And they were behind the crates that I was standing on. So they were pumping furiously. And if you see one of the images of me after the helicopter blade, you'll see the two streams of blood coming down the forehead.
Okay.
And so, yes, it was a safe thing to do. But again, just like breathing through a tube, you have to trust the people you're working with. When they say, we're going to take the top of your head off with a helicopter blade.
and unbeknownst to you, like us asking that now would be like, yeah, sure, I'd be fine with Tom Savini kind of, putting my trust in him. But at that time, as we say, you wouldn't necessarily where that was going to be.
I've been around helicopters, and at 6'4", I knew how to duck.
I'm sure. Yep. We have another question, one more question here.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got I Heart SFX asks, how long did you spend in makeup? I think you kind of touched on this. How long did you spend in makeup, and did you actually like your character? A bit of a double question.
Good question. Tom had worked on most of the prosthetics at his workshop, and it was going to be an exact fit. So when he was able to bring that to the set and that was put on, there were, it took maybe an hour, possibly up to 2 hours, depending, because there were interruptions at times. The building where we were doing the makeup was the same one at this little airport where they were shooting in the other room. So we had to be quiet. We had to keep the door closed while they were shooting anything that showed that area. And Jeannie Jeffries, who was the blonde zombie, I think she probably did some of the makeup application on me the second day. We had it ready to go the first day, but we didn't shoot that day. Either they were running behind or because of the damp weather, the rain, whatever. I'm not even sure they brought the helicopter in for that. But on the second day, then it's, okay, you're on. I got to watch, variously through the door hole or through the window, whatever else was going on. And that was pretty cool to see because I'd never really been on a movie set before. All I knew was don't mess up and don't make any noise or you're out of here.
Yeah.
There's very little tolerance for stopping a production that's, where money is rolling minute by minute by minute, even on a lower budget production, which at this time is what, $1 million or something. So as far as liking my character, yeah, I absolutely loved it. I had no idea who it was. So I got to kind of instantly create it because I hadn't seen the full makeup until that day. It wasn't like I went to Tom's and he said, okay, I'm going to do this. No, it was finalized at that time. So as I was walking over to talk to George and to see this little airplane under which wing I was going to be stepping, and George set that up, I said, hey, Tom, do these zombies talk or anything? Because I hadn't seen any of the other footage that had been shot. I had no idea how any of the other zombies were acting. Nothing at all, nothing to go by. He said, they don't really talk, but I said, well, like, can I make some groans or something like that? And he said, well, do whatever you want to do. Be your best zombie. And so I kind of went with that. As far as the movements, some people have compared both the look and some of the movements to Frankenstein. I wouldn't, or the Frankenstein's monster, to be correct, but I wouldn't say it was that as much as imagining what it would be like to have been a stiff and then trying to move.
Yeah. That makes more sense.
And George directed the part coming under the wing and walking across the field and the other parts. And at that stage, he turned the direction, I think, over to Tom, because Tom had told him he would be doing certain special effects and they needed a certain type of timing. And George was looking at the big picture. Tom was looking at each of the very specific effects and how they were going to work and what kind of timing was needed to make them work most effectively. So at that point, Tom pretty much took over the direction for that scene. And once we did it, there was no rehearsal for it. We just, okay, you're going to go up on the boxes and we're going to do this, and then you're going to go down. Okay, that was it. That was the direction. I'm going, singing my little zombie song and go up on the boxes, take a look. And George is looking at he just has this big smile on how the effect went. And he's looking at it, this is great. This is great. This is, So, all right, we're moving on to the next shot. I thought, man, that was great. That was great. But you have this, Milo, you probably know this kind of let down feeling of, is that all there is? Is there no more cake? It was so great.
So I have to go home now. Is that what you're saying?
Just around and watch everybody else.
So I'm done.
That's a fair rarity as well. Getting something done so
Quickly.
well right in the first time, and with the director just being like, I'm not going to make you do it another 3, 4, 5, 6 times or whatever, even if it was A1.
Yeah, true. In this case, like, okay, we got it. Versus nowadays, be like, okay, now let's do it again in a close up. Okay, let's do it again, and from this side. All right, let's do it again from over here.
And you try to keep that emotion going, or that feeling, or that look, and you think, so this one more. All right, here we go.
Hey, let's go again.
We did have another change of clothing for me in case we had to do a redo, so I'd get cleaned up and redressed, but fortunately we didn't have to do that. I wish I'd had some of that clothing at this point. But
yeah, totally.
That'll be awesome.
That's memorabilia there.
But I'm really glad actually that you obviously answered the viewer's question there, that you did you enjoyed your character as well. So, but I think we're going to go and move on to our little mini features that we have regularly on our show. So this one will be Ask an American. Obviously, you're an American, Jim. Milo is an American, but on this show, this is your chance to ask Milo a totally unscripted question. So take it away. I hope it's as difficult as you can as they come.
I don't want to make it difficult because I know what the answer to the question. Just really soft. Milo, yeah,
that's fine. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. You started in theater and film, and did you have a particular mentor?
Did I have a particular mentor? Not really. I mean, I had my instructor in college who I might consider a bit of a mentor. But beyond that, no, not really, honestly. I had people that I looked up to and thought were talented, but it would have been nice. In life, in anything I've ever done, I've never had a mentor. I hear this word and I think, God, that must be nice for people. But no, never.
Well, what prompted you to get into theater and into film? Was that part of your educational background?
Yeah. So, for me, it started my sophomore year of high school. And my girlfriend at the time was in theater club. And so, of course, I'm a young man and I'm like, I want to do that too.
Sure.
And joined drama. Joined drama club and got cast in A Christmas Carol, played Jacob Marley in that, and just loved it ever since. And I always really wanted to just straight up do theater. It wasn't until much later that I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll do film stuff too. But I still prefer theater over film.
You like theater over film, you say?
I just like the whole experience of it. And yes, it does take forever, like you mentioned, because you got the rehearsal time and all that. But there's also that kind of camaraderie that you build up going through the whole rehearsal process, and then the live experience of doing the show. And
I was going to say, do you enjoy the pressure of getting it right? Because obviously on the night, essentially you've got to get it right.
No, I don't enjoy the pressure of getting it right because I'm kind of bad at memorizing lines. So that part does stress me out. But no, but that's it. My girlfriend at the time was in drama club, and
there is a camaraderie in working in theater, and you have to be tip top because you know the script from the beginning to the end and where you fit in and everything. And you put all this energy and effort into it, and it can be the best and most satisfying moments of your life. And if people didn't see it at that time,
it's gone.
Whereas you could just walk onto a set in a film and people could see you forever. So there's that trade-off. But as you say, it's not doing the lines once. It's all right, let's take it from that angle. I'll change the lighting. Oh, you didn't pick up the sound. Okay, let's do that or whatever. So there are a lot of trade-offs between theater and film. Do you do odd voices for voiceover? You do some voiceover work too, right?
I try to. I don't get as much as I'd like, honestly. I need to. I don't put enough effort into my voiceover career that I should. So no, not as much.
Well, do you do odd voices?
Not really.
Like cartoon characters or anything like that? Video game characters?
I've never done one. I mean, I would do it honestly. Like, I mean, I'd have no problem auditioning, and if somebody gives me a role doing a character for a video game or a cartoon, I'd gladly do it. But so far, I have not. No. All right. Well, that's a great segment about me, I guess. But let's not talk about me anymore, and let's go on to our next segment, which is badly drawn bamboo. So this is where we get to see what kind of an artist you are, Jim.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just said badly drawn bamboo, right?
Badly drawn bamboo. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I have worked and struggled because I am not a gifted artist.
Yeah.
So for me to get to this point with this picture that I was able to compose took me a great deal of time, sweat, and labor. So when you say badly drawn, if that's the segment, maybe I missed the cue, but I can show it to you.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess if we have to, we could change it to, well-drawn bamboo.
Mediocrely drawn.
I was just thinking the same words. Mediocrely drawn bamboo.
Yeah.
Mediocre doesn't sound so bad,
Yeah.
Like an artist felt, but other than that,
Middle of the road drawn, kind of.
Yeah.
This is
All right.
your big reveal. You ready?
Let's see what you got.
Let's go. I've got to rate this shortly.
Okay, now this is you
Right,
with a microphone after you tried to come in and be the helicopter zombie too.
Oh, that's creative. At first, I thought it was like a scissor hands kind of thing. I thought I was thinking
Big cigar, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you congratulate yourselves, it can be a big cigar.
cigar smoking, but I like the chopped off head thing.
Yeah, and I like the mic as well there. But are we thinking that maybe because if we're going for creative input here, could we say that the mic, the mic wire is what cut off the top?
The mic chopped your head off.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes, the mic does cut
The
you off.
boom came in real hard.
Yeah. So instead of an audible cut off, we've got an actual physical cut off.
All right.
I've got to rate that, Jim. So hold it up again. I've got to rate this out of 10 in terms of badness. Yeah. So I genuinely really like that. Like, let me see you on the main gallery. Look, there we go. Yeah. No, I really like that. Kind of like that. I'm kind of leaning back. Pretty chilled out considering I had my head sliced off. I'm gonna go.
That may be why you're wearing a hat now too.
Yeah, that's it. To conceal the chopped off stuff. Cool.
Yeah. You pop the hat off, like the rest of the brains will go with it.
Well, there are some of those hats that just have brains on top.
Yeah,
so it's like
there's not many brains in there, honestly.
Big reveal.
So I'm going to go with.
You haven't seen any of the other actors, so be your own zombie. So
I'm going to rate this as a. So if it's low, it means it's actually good. If it's high, it means it's very bad. It's
a terrible rating system.
To rate this, but it's terrible, but it is correct. It is correct. I'm actually going to go for about you said mediocre, but I don't think it's as bad as you think, because I really like the creative input to it. So I'm going to go for a 3.5 out of 10. So that is actually good in the badly drawn bamboo stage.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Good among the bad. Okay.
It's above averagely good. I'd say if it was, I'd go with that. Yeah, pretty good.
I'll go for that, sure.
But I genuinely do love all the drawings. But Milo, where can people go to send in their badly drawn bamboos?
If you viewers would like to send in your badly drawn bamboo, you can send it to bamboo_creatives. That's BMBOO_creatives on Instagram, and your badly drawn bamboo might be featured on a future episode.
And everybody says, why does this guy not get any voiceover?
As we were saying, come on, people. What's up with that? Yeah.
I mean, come on, let's book Milo.
Give me some more voiceover work.
Like, literally. Yeah, but obviously, Jim, so we're also talking about Ukraine, and we've got a few viewer questions. So we had viewer questions for your, Dawn of the Dead stuff, but we've also got people that have, wrote in and asked about, Ukraine. So, Milo, if you want to go ahead and do that one first.
Yeah, the first one is from Johnson Peter, and it says, I can't imagine having family out in parts of Ukraine. How have you coped personally with the day-to-day uncertainty?
When we first heard about the Russian invasion, I was a complete wreck because I had been to Ukraine in 1978, 2012, and 2018, and spent time, each of those times, with family. Now, the family has changed. Some of the uncles and aunts I had have passed away, so now it's cousins and second cousins. But we have stayed in touch. The miracles of electronics and the freedom that they have now has made that possible. So I would say for the first 2 weeks, almost a complete wreck, just in terms of worrying and trying to get in touch. And my wife came up and she said she does a lot of quilting, and she said, "Would you like me to make you a Ukrainian flag?" And I said, "Wow." She said, "We could put it out front." I said, "Okay." So she did, and it's just beautiful. It's not huge, but it's that big. Blue on top, yellow on the bottom, and that the Ukrainian colors there for the blue sky over the wheat fields. But in the middle, she put a nice red heart, and that's been hanging from our lamppost out front, since she made that. And at that point, it's like, somebody else cared. And then I saw the reactions around the world, and friends and other family members said, "Have you heard anything?" And so I made a special effort to try to get in touch with every relative I knew and how their families were doing. And that's how I learned that, some had taken their children and fled the country, even though they were in Western Ukraine. We had some relatives in Kiev who came to Western Ukraine and stayed with our relatives there. And those cousins have since gone back to Kiev. It's been a very difficult time. I keep in my mind the picture of those two young boys. In my mind, they're young boys holding the rifles in uniform and knowing that at least one of them is in the Donbass region now, and hearing that perhaps 50 to 100 Ukrainian soldiers are being killed every day. The people of Ukraine are just incredible in terms of their resilience, their passion, and their defense of their country. They know what it was like under the communist system and being part of the USSR. I was there when they were under the USSR. And I have to tell you, I thought I'd never want to go back. But then when my daughter became a Peace Corps volunteer and worked there for 3 years, I got to know the country a bit more, got to know the relatives, and the oppression had lifted, as freedom came through. And I just hope and pray that people keep supporting the Ukrainian cause, and God bless all the countries that have taken in so many refugees. We have a neighbor across the street here, just came back from 8 weeks in Ireland, and he said there was a shop and hotel that they used to visit. He said now it's all Ukrainian refugees, and people have just been so welcoming. And so he said he bought a lot of things like diapers and other essentials and just gave it to them because, he knows what they're struggling with. So if you can imagine, it's not just something you watch on the news. It's when you know that the people who are really hardworking cannot go to their job as teachers, as bakers, as whatever, because the places are closed. Schools may be closed. That means there's no income. And food prices have gone up. The hryvnia, the Ukrainian currency, has gone down. So when I've sent some funds over to relatives, I've done that to convert to US dollars. And even in Poland, I could do that. In the Czech Republic, it had to be in local currency. But the US dollar is pretty stable and seems to hold its value. So it seemed like a good option in case they had to move quickly. But it's an excellent question, and I just feel good that there's been so much family support. Other family members have given me some funds to forward. Other people have asked what they can do. There was a vigil, I guess you call it, on the square in downtown Gettysburg, and somebody said, "Could you attend that? You have relatives there, right?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Do you think you could say a few words?" And I said, "Well, actually, I'd be happy to, but my daughter was in the Peace Corps there for 3 years. Maybe she could speak." So, and my wife had also gone over for a visit. And if you've seen the beautifully embroidered Ukrainian shirts, the Vyshyvanka shirts,
yeah,
we each had those. And my daughter, of course, she could have stepped right out of a bus in Kyiv or something. I mean, she looked the part. But, 150 people came, and it stopped traffic, and people were honking their support as cars did go by. Television stations came to cover it. And to me, I think that was a breaking point in terms of there is a respect for what's going on. There is a support among people. What can they do? And this is one thing that they thought they could do. Somebody even was up the night before that vigil, making a big Ukrainian flag that they hung on the square. And they said, "You could have that." And I said, "My daughter just brought back one that she had all of her students sign." And whether that's a legal thing to do with a flag, I don't know. But of course, it was very personal and very much a matter of, pride and passion for her. And since that day, she's been writing a poem. She is a writer. She's taught creative writing. She has written a poem about situations in Ukraine every day. And she posts it. And somebody said, "You should read that." So she does, reads it aloud, and then posts the words. And I couldn't be prouder of her, but just because the power of her writing, but also the insights and just how much in detail she follows what's going on there. She spent 3 years there. I was there for, a week or so at a time over a period of years. So it's very much a matter of personal and family emotion. Again, my wife has been there, and she's done whatever she can as well. She looks really good in her Vyshyvanka.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think
Ukraine, sorry, I do. It is amazing though, because with how divided everybody is on basically everything in, the country, the world, whatever, this thing is pretty unanimous. Everyone's support of Ukraine in this war. So it is really nice to see how much support that they're getting from governments and people around the world. So, which is really nice. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously, for many weeks, it was the front page and the nightly news lead story just breaking because there were so many things going on. Now, there's not so much focus on the news there. Other things have taken place, shootings in the U.S., and schools and supermarkets.
Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, of course. Yeah,
Yeah, everybody
stuff.
knows that. Those are household names.
I think the similar thing that I was going to kind of state that kind of Milo basically brought up was like the biggest takeaway is that how, no matter how the kind of like poor state of the world in terms of society is, that actually when it comes down to it, a lot of people do actually care about things and will kind of step in and make them, make a stand and make things heard and kind of put focus on that as much as they possibly can. So even if the media decide to wander elsewhere, people will still be kind of doing their bit. I'm going to move on to, there's another question that we've got from a viewer as well that they'd love to have answered from you, Jim, as well. And this one, talking of kind of the unknown, because obviously a lot of when the early days of Ukraine and everything was going on, the unknown, this person actually doesn't really know a lot about is what is going on. So this is Emma Taylor 22 asks, I don't really know a lot about what is going on in Ukraine, but I want to. Can you tell me why Russia is invading Ukraine?
This is not something that's happened over a matter of days or even the last couple of years. This is something that's gone on probably, I'd say, since at least the 1920s and 30s, where the Red Russians, as they were considered, the Red Army and Soviets, under Stalin, he wanted to feed his troops. So he put quotas on Ukraine, as the breadbasket of the world, as it's known, to supply food. But then they also imposed collective farms, which meant people couldn't farm the way they did before. They were under bureaucrats. So as a result, the production started to decrease. And the penalties and pressures and horrors visited upon the Ukrainian people at that time by Stalin, approximately 6 million people died. They were not allowed to speak Ukrainian. Schools had to get rid of any books in Ukrainian. They could not teach Ukrainian history or culture. It was basically an attempt to wipe everything out. When they continued not to meet the quotas, the bureaucrats in charge, would punish people. If you went out to the field to find, loose grain or something, you could be shot. Seed grain for the next year was taken. So those types of things resulted in, tremendous hardship and death on the Ukrainian people, and they never quite forgot it. So there was a history between Germany, Poland, and Russia. And I would suggest, if you'd like to hear about that period, there's a book called Red Famine. And it's a tough book to read in terms of some of the things I've just been talking about. But it brings a lot more detail between what was going on between those different countries and why perhaps Germany and Ukraine were not as opposed to each other as the Red Russians. So I don't think that quite answers the question, but the history goes way back. There's been this feeling that we need to conquer the world, we need to own more land and property. If you played any board games of world domination like Axis and Allies or
Risk,
what do you go for? You go for the resources, you go for the fuel, the food, the water, the metals, the mines. And when a country has those, but doesn't have a large standing army, all you have to do is swoop in and take it. Say, well, they started something, so we have to go fix it. No, it's just basically Russian aggression. And I consider Putin a villain of the worst sort, in that if he has intelligence, and he was in the Soviet intelligence service, that he has apparently surrounded himself by a lot of people who don't want to tell him any bad news. The same thing that happened with Hitler. We don't want to tell him any bad news. In fact, when I think the Soviets were within 50 miles of Berlin, and one of the generals said, the Soviet army is advancing. Hitler said, that can't be right. Take him to an insane asylum. So there's this denial of reality, and there's just a lack of empathy for people and what they've accomplished. And there's this feeling that, if people are free, well, that's not so good. They can make their own decisions and own choices, and they'll make us look bad because they're doing so well.
Yeah, because that exposes us for who we really are or how inept we are and all those kind of things. It's a strange thing, but surround yourself with enough yes men, so to speak, and you'll believe your own hype kind of thing, and you'll just keep on blindly following it. Milo, I don't know if you want to kind of bring the bar up to try and rip it up, because we always like to bring it up nice as well.
Yep,
but I'm sure that person will appreciate, obviously, the answer there, and many others that didn't really know the kind of wider background for the Ukraine.
And it's certainly one of those scenarios where it's not necessarily going to be just one easy answer. There's a bunch of things that lead to it. But exactly, let's bring it up before we wrap it up and go into our desert island moment. If you could just keep one item with you on a desert island, what would that item be and why?
Well, that would be my wife. She can
that
do
is
just
nice.
about anything. Does that count?
I guess.
Yeah.
She can do anything. I mean, she can mow the lawn. She said, "Well, let's go to the hardware store. I need to find. What do you want at the hardware store? A reciprocating saw."
Mm-hmm. That's pretty impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that.
Could she start a fire like from scratch, like 2 sticks or?
She was a Girl Scout leader.
Yeah. Okay.
And both of our daughters were in Girl Scouts, and now our younger daughter has 3 children, our grandchildren, and she started her own scout troop, and she's teaching those kinds of skills for the little kids. So it's just this progression. It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
No, that's right. Great. And I don't think anyone else has said kind of that they take their partner with them. Like other people have said, "Oh, I'll take someone else," like another person. We've had people say, take like multi-tools. Someone said take their mattress. So I think it's quite endearing actually that you would take your wife because why wouldn't you take your wife, someone that you want to spend all your time with? So
yeah, that's sweet.
And if you can utilize them to be able to survive as well, then that's
she can figure things out. Yeah. She knows plants. I can say that looks like a weed. No, that's purslane. You could eat it. No, that's fine. What about the dandelion? Well, you can eat the greens, but we can take them.
Oh, that is handy to have.
But don't touch that. That's poison ivy. But
talking of other things.
That's good for
talking of other things that you can eat. Yeah. Talking of other things that you can eat, I'm ripping it. We have got one more ultimate question, really, which is, what is your favourite cheese, Jim?
I would have to say smoked Gouda.
Oh, smoked Gouda. Oh, nice.
I like a smoked Gouda as well. That's a good answer.
They're hard to like, but they taste really good.
Oh, see, yeah. They're such jerks about everything. That's why you don't mind eating them.
We had a cookout at my daughter's, and she made some skewers with some veggies and halloumi cheese.
Yeah, or halloumi, depending on
halloumi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't instantly melt when it comes near the heat, but it tasted so good. And I thought, maybe that'll be my second favorite. I kind of like that too.
Halloumi is fun to eat too, because depending on how it's prepared, it squeaks when you chew it, and it's like.
But that annoys me when I eat it. I'm always like, I try to eat it without making it. It's like, erg.
Oh, that's the best. Okay.
Oh my God, good squeak to it. Yeah.
Yep. Like this halloumi. All right. Well, cheese is always my favorite segment on this show, and I say that with the utmost sarcasm.
But you're good at
it. Thanks. So, Jim, before we wrap up, can you let our viewers know where they can go to discover more about your work, what projects you're working on, anything like that?
My website, and I have a Facebook page. It's under Jim Krut. If you go to Jim Krut, Krut, and it looks like me, that's probably my site. And it also has my website address on there, which is Helizombie, HELIZOMBIE.com. And on there, I have photos from the film with me in them, of course. It's like
other people.
Other stuff, some garments, like I've helicopter zombie T-shirts and hoodies and tanks and trading cards, things like that. Plus some of the other films I've been in and that I happen to have DVDs of that I can actually send out to people. A number of them may be out on Netflix or Amazon, or one of the other services. So. But the thing is, with when you buy an actual DVD, usually there are special features, and it's much easier to autograph if somebody wants it autographed. Then, hey, I saw that on Netflix. Well, I can autograph your hand if you like. Great. That's the one that had the remote control, right? Oh yeah.
That's my remote control.
Yep. And so, have you got? There's a gig you got coming up. So next week, there's a big one, isn't there? Is that?
Living Dead Weekend is in Monroeville Mall, which is near Pittsburgh, which is where inside the mall most of Dawn of the Dead was filmed.
Oh, awesome.
When I was there 2 years ago, I guess it was 3 years ago, we did the full makeup on stage for everyone. And Tom Savini actually did the tug and pulled the top off.
Oh,
And
brilliant.
we did film shoots or photo ops at the little airport where it's all done. It was really cool. They do
Sounds
have
awesome.
tours of the mall and all the little passageways and boiler room locations and the roof that otherwise you've seen in the movie, but you would not have access to. So they have good arrangements with the mall to allow that to happen. But it's just huge. This year they're also celebrating Tom Savini's 1990 remake of Night of the Living Dead. And
Nice.
so you've got a lot of folks from there, some folks from the original Night of the Living Dead, a lot of folks from Dawn of the Dead. At the 40th anniversary of Dawn, they had like 40 people who were in Dawn of the Dead. Unfortunately, we've lost a couple of those, but they're finding a few more coming in out of the woodwork from different places. And so it's really nice to see. And some folks worked in several of the Romero films, and you'll see them there as well. Plus, there's some
So,
great
so,
members.
so what date? So what dates is that running for people?
That's let's see, that's the weekend of the 10th, 11th, and 12th of June. In fact, I know we have several people coming to that from the UK. One, Scott Calloway, has done an impersonation of David Emge, who was Flyboy Stephen in Dawn of the Dead. He just perfect knockoff of Stephen. And I think they're going to do some photo ops with him. So I just think it's a hoot because there's so much love for this film and the kind of the Dawn of the Dead family across the world.
Just the whole cool thing,
Pardon?
That's the thing is that the movies have like I say they've been able to kind of not extend your career but be able to carve a career out of just like I say selling merchandise, going to autograph signings. What an amazing franchise, as it were, to be part of, and to have all these people that are so enthusiastic about a movie years ago and are still as enthusiastic now, and new people. Some of these films were made before we were born, or at least before I was born. And I've grown to love, these kind of films. So in the future, even more people, they continue will be. But I think, if you can get to the gig, obviously go and see Jim and go and see some of the other guys there, and I'm sure they'll have an absolutely cracking time. I suppose I just want to kind of say thanks to kind of the people who've given our viewer questions. Obviously yourself for talking to us and informing us about kind of like humanitarian efforts for Ukrainian people, as well as all your incredible insights into your role as helicopter zombie. So I think we're about there. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Hey, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys, and I appreciate your interest in Dawn of the Dead, where things are now, and things happening with my career, and especially with Ukraine. And I hope folks will, continue their support and not let that wane over time. If you have a chance, there's also Weekend of the Dead coming up in the UK in November. And Greg Nicotero, I know, is going to be there. Greg will be at Dead Weekend in Monroeville in another week also. If you're not folks are not familiar with it, Greg Nicotero was one of the executive producers of The Walking Dead, and he had also worked
currently wearing a Walking Dead t-shirt.
Hey,
Nice. I didn't notice that.
good look at it that way. Yeah,
There you go. Oops. There we go.
Yeah.
nice.
I think it might be a Walking Dead cap as well by Total. Yeah, I think so. Seal sluggers, I think that is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you see the flagger.
The old baseball cap, baseball bat, Lucille. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, November is that the one? So will you be attending that as well, Jim? The UK.
No, I didn't do Walking Dead, but Greg Nicotero worked with Tom Savini in Pittsburgh.
Sure. Yeah.
And the University of Pittsburgh has dedicated an archive section to horror featuring the George Romero films. And they had the opening for that, and I went. Pittsburgh's like 4.5 hours from me, but I walked in and there's Greg Nicotero. Hey, Greg, because his brother still lives in Pittsburgh. So he comes back to visit fairly regularly too. Although The Walking Dead is shot mostly all in Georgia.
It is,
Several hours away.
Sonoya, I think, is it?
Pardon?
Sonoya, isn't it? I think, something like that, I think.
Yeah, I understand that a lot of the sets are being taken down now, like the towns and so forth that were there.
Yeah, I think they've finished, they've wrapped on the series and they're now moving towards the movies now, I think. So, I think they're trying to keep some bits still
and
kind of
spin-offs.
Yeah, spin-offs, and we'll definitely still be seeing more. From that.
I think so. Yeah, I think there's a hell of a franchise there now, isn't there? I think. But no, thanks so much for your time, Jim. Obviously,
absolutely.
Absolutely beautiful to talk to you.
Thanks for keeping the dead alive.
Anything I can do to help on that one,
even when the line went dead as well. Even when the line went dead, we managed to get you back. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the guests or folks who have asked questions and anyone else viewing. And stay scared.
All right. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
As always, Kev, that was a fantastic show. But what do we have coming up next on the series?
Yeah, next on Rip It Up, Milo, we've got another film review possibly, and also a great guy from Hollywood, another special effects guy, and that is Rob Berman, who's worked on Tremors, Terminator 2, The Fly, The Thing. I mean, I'm going to love it. I'm sure yourself, tons and tons of stuff. So I'm sure we're going to have a really, really interesting one with him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, fantastic films, a fantastic person. So cannot wait for that one.
Yep. I think there might even be a little bit of Goonies in there. And I know you're a Goonies fan.
I am a Goonies fan. I have been to Ashland, so that'll be a great part as well. So that's fantastic. So we'll catch you up again next time.
Same on, man. Nice one.